I should have paid attention to that engine light. But there I was, stranded on a pitch-black highway, staring at a tow truck that arrived way too quickly, with no driver. And the worst part? The live feed inside showing me, driving this same road last night, with someone in the passenger seat I didn't recognize. That was just the beginning. It all started after ignoring that damn engine light for weeks. You know how it is, work, errands, life. Who's got time to fix a minor issue? It's always, I'll handle it tomorrow. Except, tomorrow never comes. It was just after midnight, the road dead quiet, and the car made the final decision for me. A sputter, a cough, and then nothing but the sound of the wind. I was stranded, no one around, and that's when it hit me, the anxiety. Of course, I get stuck out here in the middle of nowhere. So I did what anyone would do, in a panic. I called Danny. He's the guy everyone calls when things go wrong. Always calm, always reasonable. The one friend who doesn't flip out. He told me not to worry. He'd get a tow truck sent my way. Told me to sit tight. Sounded good enough, but after I hung up, sitting tight suddenly felt like the hardest thing to do. Alone, in the dark, waiting for who knows what. I wasn't sitting long before headlights popped up in the distance. A tow truck. Already? Danny said it'd take at least 45 minutes, but here it was in barely 15. The truck crept toward me, its engine humming, the lights almost too bright for comfort. But as it got closer, something wasn't right. I couldn't see the driver. No outline, no movement inside. Maybe the headlights were playing tricks, but no, something was definitely wrong. The truck pulled up in front of me, engine still running, lights flashing, but no driver. My heart raced, stomach sinking. I approached the truck cautiously. I had to know. The seat was empty, completely empty. What the hell? I peered inside, hands shaking as I reached for the door. And that's when I saw it. A small screen mounted to the dashboard. A live feed playing. At first, I couldn't figure out what I was looking at. But then I saw it. Me, driving the same road last night. The footage was clear, too clear. But there was something else, someone else, in the passenger seat. I don't remember anyone being with me. They sat stiff, their head tilting toward me in a way that was almost unnatural. What the hell was going on? My mind scrambled for answers. I must have been dreaming. Or maybe this was some kind of prank. But none of it made sense. And when I reached up to turn off the truck, to stop that eerie footage, nothing worked. No response from the engine. The screen flickered, showing more of the same disturbing images. Then the footage shifted. Flashes of things that hadn't happened yet. Dark things, dangerous things, things involving me. Just as the panic really set in, my phone buzzed. Danny's name lit up the screen. I answered, ready to ask him what the hell was happening. But his voice wasn't calm anymore. Get out of there, now. Danny, what do you mean? What's going on? I don't have time to explain. You need to leave that truck. It's not safe. Do you hear me? Get out. I tried to stay calm, but my mind was racing. Something was off about that truck, about the footage, about everything. Danny's voice was shaking, like he knew more than he was telling me. But I didn't listen. Not right away. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could fix it. I grabbed at the door, yanked at the handle, desperate to make it stop. But when I did, something shifted. The screen flickered again, more images of me. But this time, I wasn't alone. That was it. That was the final straw. My body took over. I kicked open the door and sprinted down that highway like my life depended on it. And maybe it did. After what felt like miles of running, gasping for air, I finally slowed down. That's when I saw them. 3 idiots in Letterman jackets, standing around a busted-up car on the side of the road. Mike, Steve, and Brad. Dumb jocks from the local college, probably too full of themselves to admit they had no clue what they were doing. Hey man, what's up? Car trouble? Mike grinned, completely oblivious to the fear in my eyes. Brad and Steve laughed, throwing a football back and forth like it was the most normal thing in the world. These guys couldn't help if they tried. Yeah, car trouble. But trust me, You don't want to know what just happened back there." "Oh, come on," Steve chuckled. "What? Did you see a ghost or something?" I stared at them, not knowing how to explain, but I knew one thing for sure. Something was very, very wrong, and they were about to find out. You think a cursed highway is just a ghost story? Try running for your life at 2 a.m., watching your past flash on a screen, and realizing you're trapped in a nightmare that keeps repeating. And the worst part? The only way out is a sacrifice none of us were ready for. But Brad didn't hesitate. I stood there, catching my breath, staring at the three jocks who couldn't care less about the danger I was in. Mike was still tossing the football around like this was some joke. Steve leaned back against their car, grinning like an idiot. And Brad was flexing his arms, showing off to nobody. They had no clue. None. I tried to warn them about what I saw, about the truck, the footage, everything. But of course, they laughed it off. "Sounds like you've been on the road too long, man," Mike said, chuckling. "You ever hear the stories about this highway being haunted? Old urban legend, bro." Haunted highway. Right. That's what I needed to hear. They started trading stories about people disappearing, ghosts hitchhiking, and how this road was cursed. Steve was all into it, making spooky faces while Brad cracked up. I couldn't believe how clueless they were. Here I was, barely holding it together, and these guys were laughing it off like it was some campfire tale. "Yeah, dude," Brad said. "My uncle told me this whole stretch was shut down like years ago. Too many weird things happening. But whatever, right? Just stories." Stories. Just stories. Except I had lived it. And we were still out here, stuck, with that truck not too far back. The more they joked, the more I felt this creeping panic rising in my chest. I had to get away from them, had to get moving. I couldn't just stand around with these fools while the reality of what was happening started to sink in. So I started walking, ignoring their laughs. And that's when we saw it. A gas station, old and run down, barely visible in the night. Of course, the jocks followed, mostly out of curiosity. I figured maybe we could use a phone, get help, something. But as soon as we stepped inside, it hit me like a brick to the face. There were old newspaper clippings on the wall, yellowed with age. The headlines screamed, "Disappearances and Mystery on Highway 56. "This place has been closed for years," Mike muttered, finally showing some hint of doubt. I could feel it now. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just some bad luck breakdown. We were on a road that had taken people before, and we were next. Then I heard it. A low rumble. The sound of an engine. We turned around, and there he was, a tall, hulking figure standing just outside the gas station, shadowed by the dim lights. He wore an old, greasy tow truck uniform, but his eyes, they were hollow, dark, and burned with a silent warning. "I'm the tow master," he growled, stepping toward us. "And this highway, it's mine. You shouldn't be here. None of you." My heart sank. This was him, the one behind all of it. The cursed tow truck, the looping nightmare, the disappearances. He was real, and he wanted us gone. Just as panic set in, my phone buzzed in my pocket again. Danny. His voice came through, shaky, panicked. "You need to get out of there. Now. He's not just some guy. He's the reason this road is cursed. He took someone from me. Years ago. I've been trying to figure it out ever since." The weight of Danny's words crushed me. All this time I thought Danny was just my dependable friend. But he had history with this place. He had lost someone here. That's why he knew so much about the truck, about the curse. I should have listened sooner. The towmaster took a step closer, but then he stopped, almost as if something held him back. I looked at the jocks. Steve and Mike were frozen, finally realizing this wasn't a joke. Brad, though, he stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "We've got to fight back," Brad said, clenching his fists like he could take on this monster with brute force alone. "We can't just stand here waiting to get picked off." As stupid as Brad's bravado was, he wasn't entirely wrong. We had to do something. We had to break the loop. That's when it hit me. The truck. The truck was the key. If we could destroy it, maybe we could end this. I called Danny back and we quickly hashed out a plan. I'd need the jocks' help, even if I didn't trust them to be anything other than human dumbbells. But it was our only shot. We bolted back to the highway, where the cursed truck still sat, headlights burning through the fog. The towmaster followed us, his steps heavy, threatening. But he didn't make a move. Not yet. He was waiting for us to slip up. We surrounded the truck, ready to take it down. But as we moved in, the towmaster lunged, grabbing Brad by the arm. There was a struggle. Brad fought like hell, trying to break free. But I could see it in his eyes. He knew what had to be done. With a final desperate push, Brad shoved us all back. "Go!" he shouted. "I've got this!" And just like that, Brad was gone, dragged into the darkness by the towmaster. I stood there, stunned. Brad, the idiot, had actually saved us. He had given himself up to break the curse. The truck sputtered, then exploded in a burst of light, leaving us standing there, dazed, as the loop shattered around us. But the strangest part? As we walked back to our cars, the road didn't feel the same. It was quieter, too quiet. And when I looked at Danny, there was a shift in his eyes. That's when I realized Danny was part of this all along. The curse? It wasn't just about the truck. It was about him. Danny had brought me into this, into his own twisted plan to free himself. And now, with Brad's sacrifice, the loop was broken. But Danny was free. We drove off in silence, the highway disappearing behind us, forever changed by what had happened. But deep down, I knew the truth. Some things can never truly be left behind. Story 2. It was supposed to be a typical night. Nothing special. Mitch and I left Jim's after a few beers, laughing at his ridiculous football stories. Jim's the kind of guy who thinks he knows everything about the game, though I doubt he's even played since high school. It didn't matter. The night was routine. We hopped into my car, heading back home via Route 73. I've driven that road so many times I could do it blindfolded. We hadn't even made it out of town when it started. This trucker, a guy I've seen 100 times, honked at us like we'd insulted his mother. Out of nowhere, just blasting his horn. I looked at Mitch, but he shrugged it off. "Guy's probably just having a bad day," he said. I nodded, but something felt off. People don't just lose it like that for no reason. Then Mitch decided to start talking like he knew something. He watched one YouTube video about car engines and suddenly thought he was some kind of expert. He started throwing around terms like torque and compression, and I could tell he had no clue what any of it meant. But it was Mitch. He never stopped trying to look smart. Just as he was mid-sentence, the car started sputtering. I glanced at him. "Great timing, genius." "Relax, it's nothing," he said, but his voice was tight. That's when I saw it for the first time, the black van, right behind us. No lights, just creeping along. Normally, Route 73 is empty this time of night, but there it was, tailing us. I pointed it out to Mitch, but he was too busy messing with the radio. "It's probably nothing," he said, not even looking up. "Another driver. Chill." But I couldn't chill. The engine was coughing. The van was sticking way too close, and Mitch wasn't helping with his dumb radio obsession. Suddenly, the engine cut out entirely. Just like that. Silence. We coasted to a stop under this one flickering highway light, like a scene from every bad horror movie ever. My stomach dropped. And then, the van. It pulled over, just ahead of us, like it was waiting. Neither of us moved. I could hear my own heartbeat, pounding in my ears. "What the hell is going on?" I muttered, but Mitch didn't answer. He looked just as freaked out as I felt, his eyes darting between the van and the dashboard. That's when I saw it, the camera, hidden under the dash, small, barely noticeable unless you were looking. I'd never seen it before, and I sure as hell didn't install it. "Mitch?" I whispered, pointing at the camera. He turned pale. "Dude, I didn't put that there," he stammered. His hands shook as he reached for the door handle. "We need to get out of here, now." We scrambled out of the car, our breath visible in the cold night air. But as soon as we started walking, the van's engine roared to life. It didn't follow us immediately, just idled, watching. We walked faster, but every time we sped up, so did the van. It was toying with us, keeping just enough distance to feel safe, but close enough to keep us trapped. I felt like a mouse in a cage. Mitch was losing it. His hands were trembling, and he kept looking back at the van. "This is insane. Why is it following us?" His voice cracked. I didn't have an answer, just kept moving forward. But the fear was clawing at me too. The van, the camera, the trucker. It was all connected somehow. I knew it. We made it to a bend in the road, but it was too late. The van revved louder, inching closer. I could feel its headlights burning into my back. We were still walking, that damn van creeping behind us, when we heard a voice from the shadows. "Yo, is that you guys?" Jake, the last person I wanted to see. He was a football star back in college, but let's be honest, the guy barely passed his classes. He stood there grinning like an idiot, completely oblivious to the fact that we were being followed by a psycho in a black van. "Jake, what are you doing here?" I blurted, not even sure if this was real. "Man, I know this place like the back of my hand. I'm camping up the road." Of course he was. The guy always acted like he knew everything, but I swear he had the brain power of a goldfish. Still, Mitch, always the optimistic fool, was thrilled. "Jake, bro, maybe you can help us out. The car's busted." Jake scratched his head and looked at the car. Sure. Let me take a look." He lumbered over, and before I could stop him, yanked something under the hood. The car made a loud clunk, like it was about to explode. "Jake, what the hell are you doing?" I shouted, feeling the panic rise again. The noise immediately caught the van's attention. It revved its engine, creeping closer. Jake stood there, oblivious as ever. "Oops, my bad." Great. Just great. Mitch was starting to freak out again, so I had to do something. That's when Sarah showed up. Now Sarah's the kind of person who always knows what's going on. Tech-savvy, resourceful, and most importantly, level-headed. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Route 73, but when I saw her car pull up, I felt a flicker of hope. "Get in," she ordered. "Now." We didn't argue. Mitch dragged Jake along as we piled into her car. The van had stopped again, but it was too close for comfort. As we sped off, Sarah glanced back at the road. "You guys are in deep trouble. That van? Not random." "No kidding," I muttered, trying to calm down. Sarah didn't even blink as she plugged her laptop into the strange camera we'd found earlier. "That camera's been tracking you for months." My stomach flipped. Months? I barely even noticed it tonight. "Wait, who's been watching us?" Mitch asked, his voice shaky. Sarah's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Your former business partner, Tom. The guy you had that falling out with?" She didn't have to remind me. Tom and I started a small tech company a few years ago, but things went south fast. We split, and apparently, he'd been holding a grudge. "So he's been watching us this whole time? Why?" I asked, but I already knew the answer. Sarah didn't answer directly. Instead, she showed me the screen. Multiple camera angles, all of them pointed at me. My house, my car, my life. "He's been waiting for the right moment to sabotage your new project," Sarah explained. Tonight was the night. Before I could process that, headlights appeared in the rear-view mirror. More vehicles. Tom wasn't alone. "Hold on," Sarah said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "This is about to get rough." What followed was a nightmare. Cars closed in from both sides, forcing us into a high-speed chase down Route 73. Tom was determined to stop us, and it wasn't just one car anymore. It felt like an entire fleet. Mitch, surprisingly, had a moment of clarity. "Wait, if I can get under the hood again, I think I can jam one of their engines." He didn't sound so sure, but at this point, we didn't have much of a choice. We pulled over quickly enough for Mitch to jump out. I stayed behind, heart pounding, hoping to whatever higher power might listen that he didn't screw this up. And then, against all odds, Mitch did it. He disabled one of Tom's lead cars, buying us just enough time to keep going. The relief was short-lived, though, because moments later, we were cornered at a deserted gas station. Tom stepped out of his car. "You thought you could just leave me behind? Ruin everything we built together?" I clenched my fists. "You did this to yourself, Tom. I wasn't going to let you sabotage everything." Sarah was unusually quiet during the confrontation, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Tom was spouting his usual nonsense, but Sarah's eyes were locked on her laptop. Finally, she spoke. "It wasn't just Tom watching you." "What?" I whipped around, confused. "Tom had help," she said, stepping away from the car. "From me." My blood ran cold. Mitch looked as stunned as I felt. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" "I've been working with him, tracking you. I had my own reasons, information I needed from Tom's operation. Tonight wasn't about you, it was about me." The betrayal hit hard. Before we could react, she disappeared into the night, leaving us alone with Tom. But then, in a final twist, Tom shook his head. "You're not worth it. This was never about sabotage. Jim, our friend Jim, he set this up to protect you from something much bigger. He was trying to keep you safe from people far worse than me." I didn't know what to believe anymore.